Good afternoon. We're so excited to have you with us as we continue our journey of wrestling through mental health. And one of the things we really wanted to talk about was the idea of how do we help others while making sure that we're healthy. And I'm really pumped. We've got Laura Howe here, who is the founder of Hope Made Strong, which really is an organization that is helping leaders who oversee social justice projects, whether it be missionaries, pastors, or community workers, who are investing and giving their lives to help so many people. How do we help them not burn out and have fatigue? And so we're pumped to have her here to talk to us about healthy ways we can help others. Laura, thanks so much for being with us this
Thanks
afternoon.
for having me.
Awesome. So,
Yeah.
How do we do this? One of the things is, as a lifeguard, I remember we had to learn very early that, that desire to help could actually get you killed, and that there was safe ways you can approach a victim who was drowning, and then there was unsafe ways, right? And the worst thing we want to see is people who are helping or wanting to help actually end up hurting themselves in the long run.
Yeah.
So how do we help in a healthy way?
Well, I think it's important to know that that helping others has an impact on us. That by empathizing and giving of ourselves and going in there and supporting someone and getting messy with them and alongside of them, it actually has an impact on us as human beings. And recognizing that and recognizing those signs and symptoms and how to maybe have prevention or put those safeguards in place so that we can still help others. God calls us to serve and to build each other up, but how to do that in a way that doesn't negatively impact us, that we can be built up together.
Yeah. I've seen time and time again, someone wanting to help another person and they ended up being dragged down. Illustration I teach to my kids, right? All the time. I'm like, listen, I'll make one of my sons stand up on a chair and the other one lie on the ground. I'm like, both of you pull. Who has more power? It's always easier to pull down than to pull up, right? Or when you're coming alongside people who are broken.
Yeah.
How many times have we tried to help someone's marriage who's falling apart only to come home and be fighting with our spouse,
Absolutely.
right? Like it just kind of circulates, right? And or I know sometimes when we're dealing with really difficult stuff as a pastor, I've gone through seasons where there's been a lot of just really sad, traumatic experiences. And it's hard. Also, I find myself, I'm not sleeping well. I'm not doing these certain things. And I'm really like, oh, this is coming because I've taken on so much of this pain that I've been called to go and work through.
Yeah, and I think it's natural for someone want to support others, right? We feel compassion for that person's struggle. We remember when there was a time that we had our own difficult struggles or our own situations and we wish there was someone, or maybe there was someone and we want to emulate that and they were so helpful to you that you want to go on and help others. Or, there's other reasons why we get into supporting others. Like we don't want to disappoint them. Someone asks for our help and we don't want to disappoint and say no, and that could be a real struggle. Or maybe you feel like God put you in that position or connected you with that person. So this is a God connection and this is divine moment where you are there just at the right moment to help that person. There's so many reasons why we want to help other people. And I think most of them are really, really positive. And so I don't by any means want to dissuade anyone from helping and supporting others, but to do that in a way that is life-giving for both people.
Yeah, because I think we're actually called. I think one of the signs, especially for me as a believer, one of the things is I'm actually called to help make a practical difference in the world around me. And our church wants to physically and spiritually and mentally help people on their journey. So I don't want to diminish it. So talk to me about some best practices. Talk to me about, okay, if we're going to be stepping in, what are some best practices? What are some how can we help in a way that's safety that doesn't ruin our own lives, our existence, or hurt us?
I think it's important to know, or it's helpful to know that supporting is walking alongside someone and doing the work with them, and enabling is doing the work for someone.
So like in math, when my kids just want me to do the math work for them, that's not helping.
No, it's enabling them.
Right.
Although, if you think about it, it makes it way easier for us as parents to do it for them, it's way easier. And they're not whining and complaining and rolling their eyes and slumping
Have
in
you
their...
been in my house?
I think that's all of our houses, right? You know, there's not that whining and complaining. You're just doing it for them. And that's the same way when you're supporting someone. If someone's struggling with something and you're like, you know what? I have the ability to do that. I have the finances. I have the time. I have the room in my life to be able to do that. Just doing that for someone makes it way easier. But how much did that really help your son or your daughter by doing their math work for them? They didn't learn any skills. They didn't grow any confidence, and they actually became more dependent on you, the helper. And so next time something happens, they're just going to come back. So Jeff, I'm going to throw it back to you. What do you do with your child? Maybe not math, but if they're struggling in geography or social science, if they're struggling with that, how do you work them through that?
Well, I'm learning in my life, my role really is to be more of a coach.
Right.
I'm a sports guy, so I get that concept, right? A coach to me isn't going to come and hold a baseball bat for me and hit the ball so I can run, or the coach is going to show me techniques of how I can do it, and then say, okay, you practice that, right?
Right.
Here's how you throw a football, and show me and walk me through it, develop it, teach, train, develop, give opportunity, navigate failure, go back to it and keep going, right?
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's, coming along helping is with my kids with their schoolwork is, okay, how do I coach you? Here are the principles. Why are we asking this? Ask the deeper questions and then kind of point them in some direction and let them get self-discovery.
Exactly, right? We reframe, we take a look at the problem and we break it down into smaller chunks for them, right? So they can be overwhelmed. This word problems are the worst. I was awful at them and my daughter's just getting into that. And why is there 4 different numbers in this word problem? Breaking it down into chunks and saying, okay, instead of looking at the problem this way, how about we rephrase it or reframe it into this other way? We show them how to use the baseball bat. We break it down rather than just, okay, you just swing and you hit it over there. No, you hold it this way. You have follow through. You break the problem down into pieces. And when we're supporting other people in their life and the way they're looking at it, it can feel so overwhelming that they don't know where they're at. They can't see the forest for the trees. They're just completely inundated and struggling through it. But coming alongside of them and saying, okay, well, rather than trying to tackle the whole problem, let's just tackle this small chunk. What can you do today? Or what can you do in the next hour? Or what can you do this week? How can we make it smaller and more manageable? And so as they do that, once you break it down and your child goes through the math problem or the science problem, the one piece, they now have the skills to do that one piece. And then they can apply those skills to the next step. And what can they do in there? And the same applies when you're working with someone else who's struggling and who's, feeling completely overwhelmed. Start with the small pieces, have the confidence and the skills gained so that you can tackle the next one. And that really does break it down so it's easier for them to overcome. And you as the supporter are walking them through that process, but they are the ones doing the work.
So in sports, I expect a certain return rate of failure in the sense that I'm kind of expecting, okay, the first time I teach you how to swing a bat, I don't expect you to walk out and hit it out of the park.
Right.
I'm expecting it to, maybe make it to the pitching mound, right? Yeah. Or whatever. Is there that reality inside helping others as well that we need to be prepared for a failure rate?
Failure rate and a much slower pace. So oftentimes when we're not the one experiencing the problem and we're on the outside, we're like, well, you have to do this, 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 and this, Oh, you're struggling with finances. Oh, you need to save here. You need to build a budget. You need to talk to your landlord. You need to refinance this. And here's X, Y, Z. And we're wondering why they're struggling. We're going way too fast. So and by allowing the person to do the work, they are setting the pace. You don't set the pace on how far you go or how much you do. Let them set the pace. And it is going to be, I can guarantee it's going to be significantly slower than what you're expecting.
So how do you navigate your expectations?
What do you mean by that?
Well, if I'm like, I'm going to help this person out, I'm going to give them 3 times of me teaching them how to deal with their finances, and they keep screwing up, they can go somewhere else. Like, how do you then go, okay, I'm helping this person, I want to have a sense of accomplishment, out of helping them. And instead of it, again, their life's turned around in 3 months, it's taking 2 years. How do I navigate that expectation?
Get smaller and smaller and smaller bites. That would be my recommendation, is that if they're not accomplishing, if you're doing an activity or they're struggling with paying rent or whatever it is with finances, or they're struggling and they're feeling overwhelmed and they're not finding success in that, then it's too big. Break it down even smaller. And sorry, Jeff, but it's not about you.
That's what I was going to say, right? Like
it's not about you. It's not your sense of accomplishment. Yeah.
Right? I think that's huge, though, for a lot of us that are trying to help. I was just talking with some of our staff. There's a lot of times helping others, we paint it in a certain light, but it's actually a super selfish thing that some of us are doing. We're doing it for us to have the Instagram moment, or for us to have the feel-good moment. I helped this person's marriage. I helped this person get back on their feet. And that motivation, I assume, is really a dangerous motivation.
It can be. You get the savior complex that you are here to rescue people. And when that happens, you're likely to burn out or get exhausted, or you're going to burn some relationship bridges, and it's going to backfire. But I think most people have the best intentions in mind. They just get over their head when they're supporting others, and it becomes overwhelming. Another person's life circumstances just completely take over their own, and then there's no boundaries. There's no way to, you're enmeshed when you think about how to solve their problem. Meanwhile, your family or your life is become, second rate.
I find sometimes it's really hard to battle ownership. Right, like I find sometimes when someone's got a problem that I can, through pastoral work, I'm navigating. Sometimes I can actually take ownership of that problem and solve myself. And now I find I'm lying awake at night, stressing about their financial picture. I'm lying awake at night going, what is going to happen with their marriage, and that can lead to I've got to fix it. But it's not really mine to own.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the results aren't really my responsibility.
Right. Absolutely. That is the hardest thing, is separation, creating those boundaries that's their life, and whether they by consequences of actions and decisions or by just the unfortunate circumstances of life, they're in those positions. And as a supporter, you are coming alongside, but you're not stepping into their lane. You're not stepping into their life. You're not picking up that heavy backpack, that burden that they have for them. That's for them to overcome and overwhelm, overcome. And it's really important that you keep that separation. It is way easier said than done. No doubt about that.
For sure.
No doubt about that. But it is important for you to have that healthy separation and boundaries so that you can continue maintaining that supportive relationship. Because how many times have you, a friend of yours come to you and they're saying, I'm just struggling in my relationship, and you give them a few pointers, and then they come back and, I'm struggling in my relationship, and then you give them a few more pointers, and then, a couple months later, I'm struggling in my relationship, and now you're like, I don't even care. You're not listening to me at all. I'm just going to nod my head, right? It's that's burning out. That's getting fatigued or exhausted from all the support that you're giving because it's not going anywhere. Well, stop giving them the pointers. Maybe that's not the thing that they need. Yeah.
So just thinking about this and thinking in my own world, a lot of pastors have lost their families in leading a church because they've been so in that spot of help. And what you see a lot of times is you see kids growing up actually resenting their parents.
Absolutely.
Because they're like, man, my dad or my mom were never there for me, or all they cared about was the church. And you actually see a lot of times when they're, we joke around called pastors' kids, a lot of them walk away from God because what they experienced at home or the lifestyle, the pace to be so negative. I had a great mentor in my life. Rick Boyce said this to me. He said, Jeff, don't lead your church in a way that your board is the only one at your funeral, right? The saddest thing is when a board or a district has to do the talking at the funeral because the kids won't because they didn't know mom or dad because they were so bought into helping others. How do we protect that? Especially those who have like heartbeat of like compassion and the cause of Christ. How do we protect ourselves from losing that balance and end up, what the phrase I heard was save the world but lose your family?
Yeah. Yeah, compassion fatigue or the exhaustion, the physical and erosion that we experience as helpers, as pastors, as caregivers, nurses, social workers, teachers, as caregivers, they experience compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue is not a failure or a weakness by any means. Only people who are compassionate can be fatigued. And the side effects of compassion fatigue are resentment, cynicism. You actually get more engrossed in your work. People throw themselves on the work because people need them. It's not a fault thing where you need to be needed. It's just you become so engrossed into other people's lives. And compassion fatigue can be quite devastating to families because the bitterness and the resentment creeps in and there's just no boundaries whatsoever. And that's a hard thing for pastors and ministers, I think, because they are so accessible and expected to be so accessible. So it's really hard to tell someone no. It's really hard to have, when you know someone is struggling and they are looking for support, that would be, that's not an easy thing to do, to say, no, I need to have dinner with my family. I can't have that phone call right now. But that's what's needed, among other methods of finding well-being for yourself. And I don't think this only applies to pastors or caregivers. I think all of us, want to support one another through these times and through difficult situations. And there are ways of doing that don't completely exhaust you. I encourage people to connect with the person and really validate their experience. So you don't always have to come over and be engrossed into their lives. Just recognizing the position, saying, you know what, I'm so sorry you're experiencing that. Like, that must be awful. Depression is really difficult. Divorce is really hard. Financial, like that, just validating their experience makes someone feel noticed, makes someone feel heard. And that's not taking it on, that's just acknowledging what they're experiencing. And that is huge. That has a lot of mileage to it. And then acknowledging that person has strengths and skills. When someone is struggling, say, wow, it must have been really hard for you to be able to go and teach your kids today when you're struggling with depression and didn't want to go to bed. Like, that's huge for you. Like, that's amazing. You must be that takes a lot of strength and courage for you to do that. And then offer support. Then you can offer support that doesn't exhaust. So, you know what? I'm going to the grocery store. Why don't I just pick up a rotisserie chicken, some wedges and a salad, and I'll drop it by. Then you don't have to worry about dinner tonight. That's one thing off of your plate. You don't have to say, you know what, I'm going to drop my entire life and I'm going to come over and rescue you. There are simple ways that you can support that doesn't exhaust you. And then checking in that they have other options and that they're safe. So, if you're starting to feel worse, do you have someone to call? You're not offering yourself, because if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can say, do you have a doctor? Here's the walk-in clinic. Here's, do you have a counselor? Here's the reach out line for the crisis line. Is there some way that you can talk to someone if you're starting to feel worse? And then offer encouragement. I believe in you. God created you for a purpose. This is not the way, life is intended. And I believe that you're going to get through this. And those are 5 simple steps that you can do to encourage someone who's struggling that doesn't require you to become completely engrossed into their life, so that you're still there as a supporter, you're still walking alongside someone, but you don't have to be drawn down, and you don't have to be completely enmeshed into their struggle.
So you said 2 things. One that I thought that was big, that Amber tells me all the time, is sometimes just listening is as good as giving advice.
Yes. Oftentimes people don't want your advice.
Just validating the feeling.
Validating the feelings. Right? That's so hard for so many people.
I'm not saying I'm the best at that. And then the second thing you said that actually really hit me is the saying, it's okay to say no.
Yes.
I've learned in my life that if I don't say no to somebody, then my yes has very little power to it. Right? If I'm always saying yes, 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 then actually I'm running so thin, I'm not able actually to do what I'm called to do, or be the best version of myself, or offer the right help. Do you have any insight around, especially people pleasers, especially people who have a need to be needed, especially those who have a compassion for Jesus and a heart for the broken? How do we learn that word no? My 2.5-year-old, she knows it well, but how do we learn that?
It can be so difficult to say no because you don't want to disappoint someone, and there's so much guilt. If I say no, they won't think that I care, or if I say no, then, they'll be disappointed in me, or there's a lot of reasons. But rather than focusing on saying no, how I think of it is focus on what you're saying yes to. So you can only be in one place at one time. You can only do one thing at a time. So if you're saying yes to someone, if you're saying yes to help someone move their house or shovel their driveway or go for coffee with them, obviously maybe not right now, but later, then you're probably saying no to your spouse or your kids or that project that you've been working on, or maybe you are going to have to miss a class at the gym. So what you say yes to, you're automatically saying no to something else. So rather than saying no to that person, tell that person what you're saying yes to. So you're not saying no, you're saying yes. And say, actually, I've already said yes to my daughter that I was going to help her with her project. Unfortunately, I can't do that right now. I would thank you for asking me. I'd love to be able to help. And then give an opportunity for them, not give an opportunity, but tell them what you are available for. So rather than saying no, say yes. Choose what you're going to say yes to. And when people hear what you're saying yes to, people are like, oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's the most important thing to spend time with your kids. That is what's important. I will catch up with you at another date. Or, I've already committed to, helping out in the nursery. Unfortunately, I'm not able to help out with greeting this week. Oh, absolutely, totally understand. Or, I've said yes to a date with my spouse, so unfortunately, I can't do girls' night on that week, or whatever it is. You're telling people what you say yes to shows commitment, and it shows that intentionality, and it shows that you're not rejecting them.
That's cool.
It's something that you've already committed to, and then opening an opportunity for them, but tomorrow I can give you a call, or, whatever you feel that comfortable in giving.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that's so powerful, right? Because what you are saying no to, you're saying yes to something else. Or what you're saying yes to, you're saying no to something else. I think that's a really cool perspective. In closing, one of the things that also hit me, I've had mentors talk to me about self-maintenance, right? So I enjoy working out. And I've had a lot of, sometimes you're like, oh, I'm working out, or I should be doing this, or should be doing that. And I've had a lot of them, they're like, no, that's important. One of my mentors is like, look, I have to go golfing, in the summertime when we're allowed to. Golfing is a way that he stays. And he's like, I'm a better helper. I'm a better person because I actually take that time in a week and I use that time to rebuild myself so that I actually can be a better pastor or a better leader, right? Or whether you're a nurse, man, our frontline workers are working so hard right now. It's okay, and it's actually important to go, you know what? I need to do whatever your version of self-maintenance is, whether it be working out, golfing, reading a book, sailing. I don't know. I'm just coming out. Flying airplanes. Whatever it is. Yeah. I think that's so important, right? You got to know what brings joy into your life and still be able to create those moments in that space.
The scripture, Matthew 11:28, is something that I hang my hat on so much. It says, come to me all who are labored and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And I think it's important that the first part of this is come to me all who are heavy burdened or heavy laden and burdened. And that's important because the scripture is telling us to self-reflect and to identify and check in with ourselves. Am I stressed out right now? Is this overwhelming? And then it's okay to find rest. And what activity you find rest in is going to be different for so many people. Extroverts, introverts, it could be anything, right? So whatever you find rest in, that is rejuvenating. But you first need to identify. So rather than just being like, go, 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 take the time to check in with yourself. Are you exhausted? Are you stressed? Are you burdened? Are you worn out? And then take the time to do those activities, seek God, and find rest.
So in closing, I think this is so important to understand. those of us that are working so hard, the best way you can be a help is if you're healthy. And we want you to be healthy. We want you to be the healthiest version of yourself, because if you're not healthy, then the help you give is going to be really labored and really difficult. And so I do want to highlight Laura's organization, Hope Made Strong. This is kind of your bread and butter, right? This is what you do, is you help people who are helpers. And so if you are a frontline worker, if you're a doctor, a nurse, a first responder, if you're a pastor, a missionary, a social worker, anyone, I'm probably missing a whole bunch of helper careers. But if you are involved in one of those really kind of gifts of service and help, I'd love for you to check out the resources that she has available. They're all listed, her webpage is listed down in the link below. Would you check it out? Would you engage? Because I really want you as a helper. I know, especially this season, how hard you're working and how much your work matters. But I don't want you burning out. We don't want you ended up being hurt. We don't want you to lose your family. We don't want you to lose your physical health. We don't want you to lose anything. We actually want you to gain, grow, and be stronger. And so we'd love for you to really take those resources. Laura, thanks so much for being with us today. We hope this has been a powerful time, and we are so grateful for you being with us. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Take care.